Hello and welcome back to another episode of Redefining Moments. I am, as always, your host Kelly, and I am here to join you wherever you are at in the world today. Now, in this episode, I want to talk to you about, being authentic in the world and being vulnerable with that. And I think a lot of what I'm learning at the moment through doing this podcast is the risks and the fears involved about putting yourself out there publicly and vulnerably. I've been having a lot of conversations this week about other podcasters who have been perceived in certain ways. And I think because of this, it's made me feel a bit under threat about putting myself out there in the world open to interpretation. And I think in this episode, I want to talk about a few things. I want to talk about what that vulnerability looks like and what those fears look like. But I also want to talk about, my understanding of interpretation and opinions. Now, recently I've been feeling vulnerable. I've been putting off posting and recording, whether it's my podcast or my Instagram post, because I've suddenly had this urge to be perfect. The urge to try and make content that is relatable or interesting or engaging. And I feel from the place I'm coming from at the moment, I can feel myself being quite deep and quite lower in mood. And I don't want to bring that onto other people. But also I want to be authentic and honest with you about where I'm at. And I guess the true stages of personal development where there are real highs and real positivities, but there's deep moments of self-doubt and worry and fear, and we go through those waves. And at the moment, I'm going through a stage of my life where I feel in the past circumstances have happened to me, and that's forced me into a state of fear or overwhelm, or simply just having to restart and figure myself out all over again. And at this point in my life is pretty comfortable. I've got so much of what I could have ever wanted. I've got so much that I once dreamed of in my life. Like, there's a lot happening in my life right now where I'm like, I would have been so overjoyed to know that this was my future. But regardless of all that, my world feels a bit shaken up at the moment. I feel like internally, I haven't had anything externally happen, but internally, I'm questioning my identity, I'm questioning my wants, my desires. I'm observing my old patterns and behaviours in life and actually realising how much they've held me back. And this specifically comes to people pleasing. And what I'm seeing this project itself in is actually through this podcast and my social media accounts, and being very openly honest and expressive online, because to be authentically yourself and to share that openly with the world exposes you and puts you more at risk. If you're being dishonest, if you're putting on a mask, it doesn't matter because the mask is your armor. But when you're putting yourself out there, you're not just putting you out there, you're putting your identity out there, you're putting your worth, you're putting your values out there. And I guess a lot of what I'm trying to do at the moment is to detach from that sense of my worth is in this podcast, my value is in this podcast, because then that means I'm exposed to people's opinions. I'm exposed to people's observations of me and opinions of me. And in truth, at the end of the day, they are just their opinions. And in truth, what I'm sharing in these episodes are just opinions. They're not facts. They're my own theories, my own observations in the world, and my own understanding of what the world means to me, and different theories and ways of making life better, but also just trying to put some positivity out into the world, some kindness, some compassion towards ourselves, and hopefully giving people the courage to be more authentic. And when I come from that place, I don't see the threat as much. I don't see the fear or the risks as much, because at the end of the day, I'm just putting myself out there, and whoever finds this as a source of help, a source of reassurance in life, will find it. And those who don't find it helpful won't find it helpful, and that's okay. But recently I've had a lot of conversations around podcasters, and there's been a lot of opinions, like very negative opinions towards them, or like mixed views of what they've said and interpreted. And I think when you are putting yourself so vulnerably out into the world, there is so much interpretation of what you've said or what you've done. And the more you expose yourself, the more you are putting yourself at risk to this. But I've been thinking a lot about what I learned during neurolinguistic programming. And everything we take in the world comes through our own filters. So information is going to be deleted, distorted, or generalized. And that means we either say something without the full understanding because we know what we mean, but we're not realizing that the other person interpreting that information will take the information through their own filters, and they will generalize, delete, or distort the information themselves. So it could be that I make a statement on how we can improve the state of humanity, like whatever. I know. I might make a statement, and it could be a simple statement and observation of the world, but someone, through their own filters, might interpret that in a positive or negative way. And I've said it before that parallel universes do exist, but they don't exist in the way that we might think if you look at Marvel or comic books or just movies and films around that genre. They exist in the sense of I have my own internal universe that I know and I understand, but also to some degree I also don't. There's a lot under the surface that I don't understand, and I'm learning that, and I'm building on that. But there's also other people's understanding of their own universe and their own world. And I think so many of us go out into the world trying to reshape the understanding of ourselves in another's universe. So I'm putting all my energy into someone to try and over-explain, overshare, over-inform in order for them to shape their reality of myself within their universe. But at the end of the day, I have no control of how that information is going to be received in their world. And I'm only going to end up exhausted and burnt out trying to convince them otherwise. If someone has an idea of who I am in their heads, they're allowed that idea. They're allowed that version of me. And I cannot control that. I cannot change that. And it's easy for me to say this because I think people are going to have their own interpretations, and intellectually, I understand that. But there is a part of my makeup of who I've been most of my life that has seen otherwise. And I think when we look at our childhood, many of us would have grown up in a system where we are responsible for our parents' emotions. We are told to adapt or manipulate ourselves for adults to make them feel better. But in truth, it's their responsibility to regulate their emotions and to teach us how to regulate our own. And when that gets into adulthood, I see it a lot in situations where I would say I see a lot of adults have adult tantrums. And this often comes from a place of expectation. It comes from a place of a need not being met and them expecting the world to manipulate to that need. And in reality, it's our responsibility to regulate ourselves. Yes, I still think there should be some form of compassion, kindness, and respect involved. But that also comes under a set criteria of what our universe identifies as respect, compassion, and an understanding, like mutual understanding. So I think it's been said before, like you might go to Japan and you would burp at a meal. I don't know if this is the truth, but feel free to add in the comment if it is. But you'll burp at a meal, and that's a sign of respect towards that person's, like, what they've done and what they've cooked. It's a sign of like, wow, that was like, thank you so much. You've shown me the greatest symbol of respect by burping from the meal. Then you come to the UK, and if someone were to burp at a meal, it's seen as a level of disrespect and rude manners. And everyone's going to have their own version of this depending on how they've grown up and what's normal in a household, a community, a country. In different areas, people are going to have their own version of what respect is, what values are, what understanding is. And I think a lot of what's going on in the world at the moment is also stemming from that. People have ideas of how people should be behaving and what they should be doing, but in truth, it's not our business. It's not our responsibility to go out and tell everyone how they should be living their lives. It's focusing on our own lives and just being the best people we possibly can be, showing up, being kind, being caring. And once again, me saying that, that's my own version of reality. I think we should try our best to be kind, to be compassionate, to be considerate of others, but also to be considerate of our own needs and respectful of our own needs, to set firm boundaries when we need to, but to also do that in a compassionate way. In a situation where you may need to assert your boundaries more clearly, then you might be more firmer in how you approach a situation, but at the same time, it can still be done with kindness and respect. That's my belief. But once again, it's a belief. It's my internal understanding of how the world should be. And if I'm completely honest, it could be my people pleaser state, but I don't expect everyone else in the world to treat me that way. If they do, great. I'm so happy. If they don't, I may be upset, I may be frustrated, but at the end of the day, that's their business, not mine. And I think I said in the previous episode what someone said to me, why should I drink the poison just because I want someone else to feel the pain? So yeah, it's been an interesting journey putting myself out there through this podcast, because I think I'm seeing the risk of exposing myself. I'm seeing the risk of putting myself out there vulnerably for people to see. And actually, people are going to have different interpretations, but it's my intention behind the podcast that counts. It's my intention behind what I'm doing that counts. I'm not going out trying to be malicious, trying to hurt people. I'm open to people's opinions if I feel it will help support me and help me grow. But I think I also know my it's not a problem, but the area I kind of need to develop is actually not taking everyone's opinions as fact. I think I'm so used to manipulating myself as a person. I'm so used to, and when I say manipulation, by the way, it's not manipulation in the sense of like I'm trying to trick people or I'm trying to blindside people. It's more that I wouldn't say it's changed my behaviour. Some people might refer to it as a social chameleon, someone who adapts to different situations. And I think in some ways that's my strength. I'm very adaptable. But it's more undermining my own needs or wants or desires in a situation to cater to another person's needs. And I think, especially as a woman, I'm not speaking for all women, but I do see it a lot where a lot of women are upset about something and they will do the thing regardless of it upsetting them and breaking that trust with themselves to make someone else happy, but then they will resent and complain and be frustrated about it. And I think that's what I mean. It's when we disregard our own feelings in order to please another person, but actually we end up bitter and resentful. And that's the type of manipulation I'm on about. And for me, mine hasn't shown up in that way for a long time. I've worked on that version of myself. So I don't think I've been self-abandoning in the sense of doing things just because other people want me to do them. I've very much lived my life in my own authority and my own authenticity and doing the things that I enjoy because I enjoy them. But there are certain areas that I'm realizing in my life where it is still very present, and there's a part of me that grieves that version of me because I look at it and I'm like, oh, that's disappointing, because I can see how that behavior has been chipping away at me, chipping away at my authority, chipping away at my joy and happiness and love for life. Whether it is work or friendship or relationships. I would say not so much friendship, because I've found a lot of people in my life who align with me and see the world in a very similar way. But definitely when it came to relationships, I've had a lot of realizations recently around, one was, I'm the prize, but I'm behaving like I'm not. And I apologize if I've mentioned this in other episodes. I have a lot of these conversations with people quite regularly, so I forget what I've discussed. But I realized that I was going out into the world trying to earn love, but I'm forgetting that I am the prize. And with that, it means that I'm trying to earn love as the reward. I'm working hard to get that, manipulate that person's universe into seeing the value of what I offer, the value of who I am. But in truth, with the right person, I should never have to prove my value to them. They should see that from the get-go, and they should want to be with that and put time and energy into that. So that was one of the realizations I've had recently. And I think along with that, there's a recognition around how I self-sacrifice in certain circumstances, because I generally feel this feeling of, I don't want to make them feel uncomfortable, so I'm going to ignore my own discomfort and just ignore the situation in general. But actually, the kindest thing I can do in that situation is assert my boundaries. My friend has this phrase that she uses with her parenting, and she loves it. And it's, the parent leads the relationship. And I've realized that when it comes to our own boundaries, we lead the relationship. So when we set certain boundaries, or when we put ourselves out there into the world, we choose what we let in. We choose what we're exposing ourselves to. So when it comes to boundaries, if you've already got a very porous boundary at the beginning of a relationship, I've gone through all my relationships recently, and actually, when I've laid them all out in front of me and I've explored the dynamics, I've gone, the breakdown actually occurred early on. I just didn't see it at the time. And it might be through a specific conversation that was had, or a statement that was made, and my heart sank a tiny bit in that moment. But I'm willing to make it work. I want to see what can come of the relationship. So I ignore my feelings, or don't explore them more. And then that was just one stepping stone into my boundaries becoming looser, my expectations falling flat, and actually the relationship ending up going on a downhill spiral. Even though it feels like it's going uphill, the truth is it was going downhill, because in that moment I started to chip away at my authenticity and my integrity. And I think that's the thing I'm starting to observe, is that actually, like, when those moments happen, how can I sit with myself and establish the direction of the relationship that I want? How can I be the leader of my own relationship? And it's not coming from the sense of I need to control the other person. That's far from it. It's from the sense of how can I come from my most powerful and authentic place right now in myself? How can I listen to my own gut and my own intuition and my own needs and wants right now and express them in the way that establishes that boundary to begin with? If that person aligns with that boundary, then there's no issue. They'll continue to be in my life and we'll continue to explore how it grows. But if that person falls at the first hurdle, and I'm not saying it's a test either, but if I set a boundary and they don't meet that boundary, yet I continue with that relationship, I'm essentially saying my worth is less valuable than this relationship. And we're creating a foundation that is unstable from that moment on. We're creating an expectation of a lower standard. And that's what I'm realizing from my own situations. I've said this many times before. I do not regret a single person I've been with. I love all of them for what they've shown me about myself, for the sides of myself I've developed as a result of that connection. I am so, so grateful for every single one of them because they've led me to the woman I am today, and they've all been beautiful in their own ways. And in some cases, there were screaming red flags that I was not seeing, but at the end of the day, that was on me as much as it was not on them at all. It was on me for seeing that red flag and going, that's not great, but let's shrink myself to make myself acceptable for you. It was just a sign of misalignment that I missed at that time. And through each experience, I've gone, okay, that's something that we're not going to accept in future. And I keep saying this is a behavior or this is something I'm not going to accept, but I'm thinking it's something the other person is doing wrong. And in reality, when I first meet someone, they are shining and they're beautiful, and I see possibility and wonder and love and hope. So because of that, I'm not seeing the flaws or the alarm bells going off. One thing I have realized is if you know anything about attachment styles, they're really good alarm bells. They're really good alarm bells. People create an identity around attachment styles. So there's there's a secure attachment, there's avoidant attachment, there's anxious attachment, and there's anxious avoidant attachment. I recommend going and looking them up yourself and researching them. But there's these areas of attachment styles where we've developed as children, and it bleeds into our relationships when we're older. And a lot of people create an identity around it. I hear a lot of people go, I'm an anxious attachment, I'm an avoidant attachment. And one thing I've realized for me is depending on the relationship dynamics, I can fall into an anxious attachment, an avoidant attachment, or an anxious avoidant attachment. I don't have a set attachment. I'm actually a very secure attachment when I feel stable in a relationship. When I don't feel stable, the alarm bells start going off through anxious or avoidant attachment styles, like the symptoms of that. And that is information. That is information where I can go away and go, what is this telling me about this dynamic? The issue I've had up until now, I hope it doesn't continue, but it will in whatever sense it needs to. But the issue I've had up until now is my anxious avoidant alarm bells have gone off. And I've gone, there's a problem here. What can I do to fix myself? What can I do in this situation to learn how to adapt? What is this teaching me about myself? And I take it as a responsibility to learn about myself, which is great. But with this, I risk ignoring a very clear sign that either there's incompatibility in this relationship, or there is a need that is not being met through this relationship. And in some cases, it can be based on the fact that my physiological needs aren't being met, that there's a security issue going on in my life, and this is then showing up in my relationship. But if I'm being completely honest, it's incompatibility or its needs not being met. And this is where I can go into it and explore my non-negotiables and my negotiables. But when you are in that moment, it's so easy for me to say this right now because I'm coming from a place of I'm reconnecting with my single side of myself. I'm reconnecting with the side of myself that is just prioritizing my needs and myself. Essentially, I'm looking at life of I'm going to continue my life from here on out as a single person. And if someone shows me that they're aligned with my values, shows me that they want to put in the effort and time into building something with me, then I'm going to be open to the idea of not being single. I'm not closing myself off. I'm just choosing to prioritize myself beyond sacrifice. We'll see what happens. As I said, easy to say this when I'm single. But I think it's made me realize a lot about how these things show up in our lives. And the risk when we're going through this self-understanding and self-awareness is that we can create identity, a sense of identity or labels that actually box us in rather than open us up. And I think in some cases, as I've said before, being boxed in isn't always a bad thing. It allows us the time to know ourselves, to understand ourselves, but it's when it starts to become a prison that we need to explore actually, how can I step outside of this? Like, yes, this may be a part of who I am, but it's not the whole of my reality. It's not the whole version of me. And it's the case with the attachment styles. So my identity is Kelly. Like, I am Kelly. I am I guess if I look at my skills, my qualities, I'm a bright, bubbly, enthusiastic person. I have a lot of interests, hobbies, passion. I love people. I love helping people. I love supporting people. I love personal development. Like, there are all these qualities about myself, but they are not who I am. If we stripped everything away, we're left with an energy. We're left with an essence. We're left with a sense of self. We are not our attachment styles. We are not the value another person puts on us. So who are we beyond that? And I think that's the interesting thing about the personal development journey. It's so easy to just create this. We're very complex beings. There are so many layers to who we are, to the point that there are some things we just can't quite put into words. We can't quite understand. Yet the way we look at the world is very 2D. It's very compressed. It's like getting something, I know, it's like, I guess it's like when we have models of the universe or models of the earth. It's something so vast, it's actually quite difficult to put in all the details and all the complexities of what it actually is. So the models we see of the universe, for example, are extremely simplified versions of what that is that allow us to comprehend it. But it's a very simplified, narrowed version of what that actually is. And I think when we think of people, when we think of situations, when we think about people, like going back to the podcast thing, my concern, when we think about conversations we have with people, we're just getting a small sliver of that service. We're getting a simplified model of reality, and we're then interpreting it through our own understanding of the world. the truth is we're complex beings, and there's so much more to us than labels, than what we say and how we're interpreted. And I guess that's a lot of what I'm trying to understand, because I think as well, our brains, as I said, our brains naturally simplify things. They just delete, distort, and generalize. So it's so easy to be overwhelmed with the world in that sense, because the information that's coming in is simplified in its complexity. But it can feel so heavy and so overwhelming. And I think often the information can then start being used to attack ourselves, when in truth, I don't know, is it going to matter in a year's time? Is any of this going to matter in a year's time? I don't know. I'm waffling now. Once again, it's really hard because my brain is right now, what you guys don't see through what I'm saying is like my mind is trying to connect so many dots right now of what I've said. It's trying to bring me back to the conversation. But this is what I see through coaching as well. Like, you can start with a single topic, and the beautiful thing is when you let someone talk and you go beyond layer after layer after layer, what you start to see is something completely different. Like, you think it's one topic at the start. It could be that you want to focus on your fitness, but the truth is there's something right at the core, which is actually a loss of identity, and you're trying to regain that. And it's not until you go through these journeys and like just let them flow and unlock the layers by layers by layers, you start to realize, as I said, there is a deeper, more complex world beneath the surface. And I think the compassion that we can offer comes from actually understanding and appreciating that complexity. If you're at work and someone says something, actually think, did they actually mean what I think they meant? And then go and have a conversation with them. It's so easy to, like, we call it complex equivalence in neurolinguistic programming. It's so easy to create complex equivalence. Like, this person hasn't texted me, therefore they must not be interested. They must be ghosting me. And to be honest, there's probably a good backstory of history that reinforces that opinion, but there could be so much more going on under the surface. And what you could do in that situation is just message that person and be like, rather than going, oh my God, they're rejecting me, just drop them a message and say, hey, I just wondered, I know we don't know each other that well yet, but I just wanted to check in and make sure you were okay. I haven't heard from you. And I just want to know that you're doing all right. It's focusing on the compassion of actually, like, what else could be going on under the surface, and is that person okay? Like, many situations in work, if you think about it, it's so easy to be caught up in an ecosystem where, like, I don't know, someone will come in and, like, they'll get annoyed with you, and then it creates this, like, ripple effect of people being annoyed with each other all day, when actually all it could take is, like, just going and seeing that person and just saying, hey, I just want to check you're okay, because I've noticed a shift in your tone, and is everything all right with you? And it might just give someone the opportunity to, like, open up and just share the complexity of their world a little bit, just to make it that little bit lighter, because sometimes we don't actually know what's going on beneath the surface until we have an opportunity to talk about it. And if I'm honest, that's what I found today. I started this podcast obviously talking about the fear around putting myself out there publicly, but actually the more I've spoken about it and the more I've unlocked the joy of doing this, that fear doesn't exist right now, because I'm not living in the fear. I'm living in the action. I'm living in the joy. I'm living in the steps of communication and just sharing myself with the world, because when I'm living within it, the thing that I enjoy, which is sharing and talking and hopefully giving people an opportunity to understand themselves better, that fear is not existing at all. And I guess this is the issue many of us face, is we are stuck within our own universe. We're stuck within our own world. And I think there's a shame about sharing ourselves with the world. There's a shame about putting ourselves out there and being vulnerable out of fear of getting hurt. But I guess part of my dream, ambition, hope in life is giving more people the courage to step into themselves and share that with the world and see what happens. And in some cases, you might be met with judgment, you might be met with critique or opinion. But also, is that the right environment for you? Is that the space where you actually need to be the full version of you? Or is that the information you need to redirect yourself? But once again, where's their opinion coming from? Because another thing I looked into is how I realized today I was scrolling through my Instagram, and I am someone who deeply celebrates people. I love it when people are going out and doing their thing, and doing their passion. I don't care what you do, but if you have joy behind it, if you have authenticity and passion behind it, I am like, oh my God, yes, look at you go. But then there's a counterpart of who I am. It's strange because when I'm in the coaching mindset, I don't see this at all with people. I celebrate them. I am so excited for them because I know the full story. I know the passion. I know the hard work, the energy. I know more information about why they're doing what they're doing. But when it comes to people sharing a skill online, and I think I can do a better job than that, there is a threat there. And today I explored that more deeply. I looked at, why am I feeling threatened? Why am I feeling cringy at another person putting themselves out there? And this is the whole one finger pointing out, three pointing back. Because when I explored it, I realized that I'm not doing the things that I'm passionate about. I've finally done this. I've finally done the podcast. But I was in a state of fear today. I was in a state of feeling fearful of putting myself out there publicly to be ridiculed. Yet I was then ridiculing someone, not to their face. I would never do it to their face. But I felt uncomfortable with my own feelings. I felt a sense of shame around feeling that way towards someone. And I felt a sense of shame and I guess vulnerability because I realized that I'm not doing what they're doing. And I feel I have got a lot of skill to offer the world, but looking at what they were doing, I was like, I feel like I can do a better job. I probably couldn't at all, but at least they're out there trying. At least they're out there doing their thing. What have I got to say for it? Nothing. So it made me realize that I was seeing people's vulnerability and I was feeling vulnerable for them. I was embarrassed for them. And it's not that they should be embarrassed of what they're doing at all. But I was feeling the exposure. But it plays into where my mind was at that moment in time. Normally I'd probably go through my newsfeed and I wouldn't even notice. I wouldn't even care in the nicest way possible. I wouldn't fixate on it. But today I did. And that's because I was coming from my own fear and I was filtering the world through that fear. So when someone comes to us and disagrees and shares their opinion or concern, it's worth considering where their fears might be coming from. Because it might be as well, if you look generationally, there are certain things we would do as a society that certain generations wouldn't. And that is a threat. That is a fear. Because when they were younger, you couldn't do that. And I realized there are feelings around people in my life that I've had in the past where I have felt anger and feelings that I don't really like to admit to. And I realized when looking into it, it was because, once again, how they were presenting themselves in the world was what I had learnt not to be like. And it made me feel uncomfortable. And in a lot of cases, that discomfort causes us to project those feelings onto other people and to share our opinions of what they should be doing instead. We're trying to contain them in the box that we've created for ourselves. We're going, you shouldn't do that because it's dangerous, it's vulnerable, it's a threat. And we're sharing our opinions and judgment behind that, even if it comes across in a more hateful way. A lot of the time, people are just projecting their own fears and their own shame of what they've been taught, because it counteracts the truth of their own reality. So yeah, that was a very interesting detour today into, I guess, how actually exposing ourselves and putting ourselves out vulnerably in the world can be perceived. Looking at the deletions and distortions and generalizations of the filters in our brain, and how that doesn't just affect what we say, but it affects how it's been interpreted as well. And actually, we have no control over how it's being interpreted. But what we can do is explore the depths of our own understanding on our own reality, and also give people the benefit of the doubt, give them the opportunity to have a conversation, because you don't actually know what people meant until you have a conversation with them. It's very easy to fall straight into that judgment. It's very easy to fall straight into that opinion. But also it's having the courage to just express yourself anyway. And I think that's what I'm trying to teach myself at the moment, is that people are going to have an opinion. People are always going to have judgment. People are always going to try to share their reality and project it onto you. So if they're going to do that anyway, why not just go out and be the full authentic version of you? People are going to give their opinion. And that's what I'm taking away from this episode today myself, is actually show up anyway and deal with the consequences of your authenticity, whatever that may be. If people don't like it, they don't like it. You can just find a space where they do. And actually, by being the truest version of you, still shaped around compassion and kindness, because I think sometimes, I'll be honest, people use their authenticity, and I'm doing quotation marks around that, quote unquote authenticity, to also excuse being rude and being hurtful to other people. And actually, I think in that case, as I said, there's a massive complexity behind this. But I do think in those cases, it's an excuse to be rude. But actually, we can consider our actions. We can still be thoughtful of our actions and go, what is the intention behind this? What is it I want to get out of this situation? And actually, is treating another human being this way making my life any better, offering me the life that I want? And does making someone else feel small actually help you get to where you want to be? Now, I guess the people who are going out into the world, I don't know if this podcast is going to be for them. I doubt they would have even got this far into the episode if they thought that way. But regardless, it's just knowing that the world is what it is. We can't control it. We can't control how other people are, how other people think. We just have to show up as authentically as we can for ourselves. And when there are moments where we recognize where we have been disowning or not being authentic, it's just giving ourselves the kindness to understand and respond. And that's it. So if you've enjoyed this episode, please, please, please let me know what resonates with you in the comments. What in particular has been a realization for you today? And if you think you have a friend or a family member that could really, really benefit from listening to this episode, whether it's to do with a work-related issue or a relationship issue or just a general understanding of life, then send this their way and share it with the world. Because, as said, the more we allow people to understand themselves, I think the more we shape the world into a kinder and more compassionate place. So I will leave you on that note. Until next time.